In the early 1980s, deep within the Brazilian Amazon, a small riverside town named São Miguel do Rio Negro welcomed a new physician, Dr. Ricardo Alves. He was young, handsome, and charismatic, with a reputation for compassion. People said he left a high-paying job in São Paulo to serve the poor. Within weeks, he became a local hero. He would visit remote villages by boat, treat sick children for free, and even bring food to elderly patients. Everyone trusted him. Everyone except an old midwife named Dona Celina. She claimed she'd seen him whispering to himself at night near the old cemetery, carrying surgical tools in a black bag. But no one believed her. Not yet. One humid night in 1983, a young woman named Mariana Costa came to the clinic for a minor stomach procedure. She never walked out. Dr. Ricardo told her husband that she'd suffered a sudden internal infection. The body was sealed quickly in a coffin, and the hospital refused to release any report. A few days later, Mariana's family noticed something horrifying. Her body had been surgically opened and emptied of organs. When they tried to confront Ricardo, he had already left town on medical duty. Over the next 3 years, more and more patients disappeared. Most of them were poor villagers, often with no family to ask questions. A nurse named Helena Duarte began to suspect something was terribly wrong. She kept a secret notebook, listing dates, names, and the last times patients were seen alive. One night, she followed Ricardo into the hospital basement and never returned. Her notebook was later found floating in the river, every page soaked in blood. By 1988, rumors had turned into fear. Families began leaving town at night, whispering that the doctor was taking more than just lives. When authorities finally raided the abandoned hospital, they found a hidden morgue beneath the floor. Inside were glass containers filled with preserved human organs, lungs, hearts, eyes, all labeled with the names of missing villagers. On one wall, written in what appeared to be blood, were the words, "I gave them eternity." After the discovery of the secret morgue, Dr. Ricardo was nowhere to be found. The police searched every road, river, and airstrip within 200 miles, nothing. It was as if he had dissolved into the jungle. But strange reports soon began emerging from neighboring towns. A man matching his description was seen offering free medical aid to rural families, moving from one village to another. Those who accepted his help later vanished. One witness, a fisherman, told investigators he saw Ricardo's small boat drifting at night, carrying something wrapped in white sheets, and the faint glow of surgical lamps shining through the darkness. In 1992, almost a decade later, a journalist named Gabriel Montes stumbled upon a sealed government archive marked Confidential Case 413R. Inside were hundreds of photos, autopsy notes, and witness statements all linked to Dr. Ricardo. The files revealed something even darker. The doctor had been conducting unauthorized transplant experiments, attempting to keep organs alive outside the human body for extended periods. Each missing villager wasn't just a victim, they were a test subject. Gabriel tried to publish his findings, but 2 days before his article was due to print, his house mysteriously caught fire. He never made it out. In 2001, nearly 20 years after his disappearance, reports emerged again, this time from Peru. A small mountain clinic was run by a doctor calling himself Ricardo de Luz, Ricardo of Light. His patients claimed miraculous recoveries from deadly illnesses. But when a local priest visited to bless the clinic, he found a locked basement filled with medical equipment coated in blood and jars containing what looked like human hearts still beating faintly. The priest never spoke publicly again. In 2004, a woman named Isabella Vargas escaped from a jungle camp claiming she had been one of Ricardo's patients. Her story horrified investigators. She said she'd been sedated for weeks and woke up surrounded by cold metal tables and flickering lights. Ricardo told her he was close to perfection, that he could now transfer life from one body to another. Her escape was pure luck. A fire broke out in the lab, and amid the chaos, she fled into the forest barefoot. Authorities searched for the camp she described, but found nothing, only ashes and the smell of chemicals. In 2011, a group of documentary filmmakers discovered a half-buried metal box near the ruins of an abandoned Peruvian village. Inside were several VHS tapes labeled simply RA. The footage showed surgical operations performed in dim candlelight, organs pulsing in jars, and a man's voice whispering prayers in Portuguese. Forensic experts confirmed the voice belonged to Dr. Ricardo Alves. One final tape ended abruptly with the camera turning toward the lens, and Ricardo's blood-covered face staring directly at the viewer. Months after the last known sighting of Dr. Ricardo, the trail went cold. Authorities believed he died in the jungle. But in 2013, far to the north in the city of Medellin, Colombia, a new physician appeared, Dr. Raul Andrade, a middle-aged man with impeccable credentials, claiming to have studied medicine in Argentina. He quickly became a trusted figure in the hospital, admired for his calm voice and steady hands. Yet, something about him unsettled the nurses. He never blinked much, avoided mirrors, and refused to discuss his past. What no one knew was that Raul Andrade was just another mask, and beneath it was the same face that haunted the Amazon decades before. Patients began whispering about miracles. Terminally ill individuals walked again within days of Raul's operations. He called his techniques cellular regeneration, but refused to share them with the medical board. His private ward was locked at all times, and only select patients were admitted, all of them with severe organ failure. But soon, families began reporting that their loved ones had vanished after treatment. Raul claimed they'd gone home. The hospital's records, however, showed no discharge forms. A young nurse named Luciana Torres began to suspect something was terribly wrong. One night, she followed Dr. Raul into the basement of the hospital after hours. Through a cracked door, she saw a hidden surgical suite, cold lights, glass tanks filled with reddish liquid, and human organs suspended inside. When she gasped, the doctor turned slowly, his eyes cold and lifeless. He smiled and said, "You shouldn't have come here, Luciana." She fled in terror and filed a report with the police. The next day, she never showed up for work again. Her apartment was empty. 2 weeks later, a janitor cleaning the hospital's old wing noticed a foul smell seeping through a sealed door. Authorities broke it open and found what could only be described as a makeshift morgue. Dozens of corpses lay on metal tables, some partially dissected, others stitched in grotesque ways. On the wall hung medical charts labeled Phase 3, Conscious Transfer. Fingerprints on the surgical tools matched those of Dr. Ricardo Alves, not Raul Andrade. That was the proof investigators needed. Before the police could arrest him, Raul vanished again. Witnesses claimed they saw him leaving the hospital disguised as a paramedic, driving an ambulance toward the outskirts of the city. The vehicle was later found abandoned in a field, the driver's seat drenched in blood, but no body inside. Inside the ambulance, investigators found surgical tools, several blood bags, and a forged passport with yet another name, Dr. Esteban Ruiz. It was clear he was planning to start over once again. 3 months later, after an international manhunt, police finally cornered him in Quito, Ecuador. He was operating a small private clinic under the name Esteban Ruiz, performing illegal surgeries for wealthy clients. When they raided the clinic, they found him mid-operation, the patient on the table, heart exposed, still beating. Ricardo didn't resist. He just raised his blood-covered hands and whispered, "You can't kill me. I've already transcended." He was taken into custody, but what happened next would make headlines across the world. In the new city of Rosario, Dr. Morales adopted a false identity, Dr. Javier Duarte. He presented forged documents, a polished resume, and a charming smile that disarmed everyone around him. The hospital administration, desperate for skilled staff, didn't question much. Within weeks, Morales was performing surgeries again. But this time, his methods became even more disturbing. Nurses reported missing anesthetics, unexplained blood samples disappearing, and whispers of patients who entered surgery and never woke up again. What no one realized was that Morales had built a secret room beneath the hospital's old wing, a hidden laboratory where he continued his gruesome experiments. He wasn't just killing for pleasure anymore. He believed he was on the verge of a medical revelation. In his twisted logic, the human brain could be reprogrammed through pain, fear, and chemical control. The screams that echoed late at night were dismissed as construction noises by those who didn't dare investigate. But Morales' arrogance became his undoing. One night, a janitor noticed strange stains leading to a locked maintenance door. Curiosity got the better of him, and he called the police. When authorities forced the door open, they discovered the hidden lab, blood-soaked tables, surgical tools, and dozens of jars filled with preserved organs. Morales was gone, leaving behind a chilling note that read, "Medicine demands sacrifice. I'll continue my work elsewhere." The manhunt stretched across several countries. Newspapers called him the Surgeon of Shadows. Interpol issued red notices, and terrified citizens reported countless false sightings. For nearly 3 years, Morales evaded capture, moving under different names and performing illegal operations in remote villages. Each time he fled, he left behind mutilated victims, their bodies marked with surgical precision, as if he were still chasing his impossible cure. Finally, in 1982, authorities tracked him to a small border clinic between Argentina and Paraguay. When the police stormed the building, they found Morales standing in the middle of a dimly lit room, surrounded by medical charts and surgical equipment. He smiled calmly, raised his hands, and said, "You can arrest me, but you'll never stop the evolution of man." Minutes later, before they could cuff him, he injected himself with a syringe filled with his own serum, collapsing dead within seconds. No one ever discovered what was inside that syringe. Some say it was poison. Others believe it was his final experiment. Dr. Ricardo Alves may have been captured, but the shadows of his crimes still linger. In the dark corners of forgotten hospitals, who knows how many others still practice his art? Some stories end, but this one never truly did. In 1998, a group of young investigators entered the Black Pine Forest to film a documentary about local ghost sightings. They had cameras, maps, and confidence, but they never came out. What happened inside those woods remains one of the most chilling mysteries in modern history. And tonight, we're going to uncover the truth behind their disappearance. In March 2011, a small team of paranormal investigators known as the Spectre Unit set out to document their latest exploration, an abandoned psychiatric hospital deep in the forests near Rouen, France. The building had been closed since 1979 after a massive fire destroyed its eastern wing, killing at least 30 patients and 2 doctors. Local authorities sealed it off permanently, warning that the structure was unsafe. But the Spectre Unit was never the type to listen to warnings. Led by Marc Delon, a 32-year-old documentarian obsessed with the supernatural, the team planned to record a 48-hour investigation using night vision cameras and wireless microphones. They wanted to prove or disprove the rumors that something still moved inside the burned corridors. At exactly 7:43 p.m. on March 19th, their van's GPS showed the last known coordinates near the hospital's main gate. The last transmission received from Mark's headset came only an hour later, a distorted whisper followed by static. "If anyone hears this, it's not empty." That was the final communication ever recorded from the Spectre Unit. No one has seen or heard from the 5 investigators since that night. 3 months after their disappearance, local hikers stumbled upon what appeared to be a half-buried camera case near the hospital's northern fence. Inside were 3 damaged SD cards and a cracked GoPro lens covered in ash and soil. Authorities immediately dispatched a recovery team, assuming they had found evidence of foul play. When forensic technicians examined the footage, they found over 6 hours of corrupted video, flickering lights, distorted audio, and brief shots of empty hallways lined with rusted beds. But in the last 30 minutes of the final file, the screen stabilized just enough to show Mark and his teammates standing in front of a burned elevator shaft. One of them, Elena Rousseau, whispered something in French. "Ce n'est pas el hospital, c'est un bouche." This isn't a hospital, it's a mouth. Seconds later, the footage ends abruptly. A blinding flash, followed by the sound of heavy breathing and a metallic screech echoing through the corridor. Experts declared the noise unidentifiable. Investigators later confirmed that several hours of footage were missing, precisely between 1 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on the second night. During that window, one of the team's handheld cameras was found turned off but placed upright on a staircase, as if someone had deliberately positioned it to face the dark. When technicians enhanced the final frames, they discovered a shadow, tall, elongated, and motionless, standing in the far end of the hall. No member of the Spectre unit matched the figure's height or build. Authorities initially suspected a hoax, but thermal analysis of the footage showed a faint heat signature consistent with a living presence, not a static object. The mystery deepened further when it was revealed that the hospital's blueprints didn't include. During a search of Marc Delon's apartment, detectives found a handwritten field journal hidden behind a false panel in his study. The notebook contained drawings of the hospital's floor plan, notes about electromagnetic readings, and repeated phrases written in capital letters. They remember the fire. IT never stopped burning. In one entry, dated just 3 days before the disappearance, Mark wrote, "Elena says she heard someone calling my name through the old intercom system during the scouting visit. The hospital's power has been cut since 1980. I told her it's probably the wind, but I lied. I heard it too." The journal was later analyzed by handwriting experts and confirmed to be authentic. The last page ends with a single line: "If I don't make it back, tell them the walls breathe." In 2013, 2 years after the team's disappearance, a new documentary crew requested permission to shoot at the same location. When municipal authorities arrived to survey the area, they found no trace of the hospital itself. The entire structure, once visible on satellite images, had seemingly collapsed or vanished. Drone scans showed only a crater-like depression, surrounded by what looked like melted concrete and metal remains. Radiation tests showed mild but unexplained spikes, leading to the site's permanent closure by the French Ministry of Health. Locals claim that on some foggy nights, the forest still glows faintly blue, and anyone who walks too close can hear distant recordings, fragments of voices calling through static. "We found it. We're not alone." In early 2014, a small group of audio engineers from Lyon University analyzed the recovered recordings again, this time focusing on inaudible frequencies hidden beneath the static. At precisely 19.7 Hz, a low hum appeared, a tone so deep it could cause disorientation and fear in humans. But layered within that tone were patterns resembling human speech. When slowed down, the voice became clearer. It repeated the same phrase over and over: "Don't open the door." However, there was one chilling inconsistency. No doors were ever filmed in that part of the hospital. Experts suggested the sound might have been recorded from within the walls themselves. An archived police radio log dated August 17, 2011, captured a transmission believed to be from one of the missing crew. The signal came from the forest surrounding the hospital site, though the facility was already reported to have collapsed. The message was fragmented, but parts of it were decipherable. "This is Mark. We're under the floor. It's moving. The lights are inside now." Then, a violent static burst cut him off. The dispatcher reported hearing a second voice, a whisper that repeated Mark's words, syllable by syllable, seconds after he spoke them. The recording was later sealed by French authorities and labeled "unreleased." Psychological hazard. A leaked memo from the 1970s suggested that the abandoned hospital was once used for psychological warfare experiments during the Cold War. It referenced something called Project CLAT, a classified program allegedly designed to test sensory deprivation and hallucination induction. Witness accounts from retired staff mentioned patients who spoke in reverse sentences and reacted violently to mirrors. Some claimed that after the final fire in 1979, no human bodies were ever recovered, only melted stretchers and organic residue that breathed. Historians later found that every surviving staff member of the hospital died under mysterious circumstances between 1981 and 1983, mostly due to suffocation, despite being found in open air. In 2016, an elderly man appeared at a Paris hospital claiming to be Jean-Luc Marichal, one of the electricians who worked at the facility before it burned. He was pale, trembling, and partially blind. Doctors described his pupils as almost mirror-like. Jean-Luc refused to enter rooms with white walls and repeatedly muttered, "The lights found a body." When shown a photo of the missing Spectre unit, he began screaming and scratched his own face, saying, "They let it use their eyes." He died 2 days later of cardiac arrest. Autopsy revealed something impossible. Traces of burned dust embedded in his lungs identical to the ash from the hospital site. In 2018, an independent researcher from Berlin named Clara Voss claimed to intercept a shortwave broadcast matching the original frequencies used by the Spectre unit. It lasted only 47 seconds, consisting of distorted breathing and faint background humming. In the final second, a voice whispered directly into the mic, "We finished mapping the dark." Clara traced the signal's origin to the same coordinates as the vanished hospital. Yet satellite data showed the forest was undisturbed. 2 weeks later, Clara herself went missing. Her laptop was found open, displaying one unfinished sentence. "It's not gone, it's underneath." In 2019, a retired data analyst named Pierre Lemaitre, formerly with the French Ministry of Defense, leaked a 12-second clip he claimed was recovered from private archives. The footage showed a night vision camera aimed at a corridor filled with debris. For the first 8 seconds, nothing moved. Then, a mirror fragment lying against the wall shifted slightly, reflecting 5 silhouettes standing at the end of the hall. The problem? Only 4 investigators ever entered that corridor according to the team's original mapping logs. Frame by frame, the reflection moved closer, until the glass cracked, and the 5th figure seemed to crawl out of the reflection itself. Investigators from the French Gendarmerie reportedly recovered sealed archives labeled Blackout Section 51A. Inside were photographs of the hospital ruins taken in 1982, showing light anomalies forming human outlines suspended above the collapsed east wing. Witness reports claimed the light moved like smoke and gave off a low, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. One image in particular stood out: a scorched door frame with 5 black handprints burned into the concrete, each the exact size of the missing Spectre unit members. After this discovery, all files were reclassified as non-terrestrial phenomena. In late 2020, villagers from a nearby town, Saint-Aubin-sur-Science, reported seeing dim blue lights moving among the forest trees near the old hospital site. Dogs barked through the night, and locals described hearing metal dragging on concrete from deep underground. A farmer claimed to have seen figures wearing old recording gear, wandering silently through the fog. He said their faces looked blurred, as if something was moving underneath their skin. When police searched the area the next morning, they found fresh footprints leading to where the hospital once stood, and ending abruptly at the edge of a sinkhole that hadn't been there the day before. In 2022, a YouTube channel called Urban Echoes FR uploaded a video titled Unseen Spectre Footage. The clip, barely 2 minutes long, showed grainy handheld footage of the hospital interior. Halfway through, the camera pans toward a mirror, reflecting the face of the cameraman, Marc Delon. He looks older, unshaven, and terrified. He whispers, "It's still hungry." Then the image collapses into static, and the video abruptly ends. Forensics traced the upload location to an IP address inside the restricted perimeter of the old hospital site, a place supposedly buried beneath the forest floor decades ago. By 2023, an independent filmmaker named Lucien Marchel decided to create a documentary about the Spectre unit. During his shoot, he visited the edge of the original site and found a piece of scorched mirror buried beneath the soil. When he cleaned it, faint fingerprints appeared, 5 of them perfectly aligned. Later that night, while editing, Lucien noticed something horrifying. His reflection on the monitor blinked a second later than he did. He shut down the camera, but before the screen went black, a message flickered briefly across the reflection. "You finished mapping the dark." Lucien never released his film. 6 months later, his apartment was found empty, camera equipment still recording, facing a mirror with 5 smudged handprints. As the remaining members of the investigation team retraced their steps through the dense forest, they noticed that the trees around them had changed shape. The once familiar landmarks were gone. The compass spun wildly, and the GPS showed they were in the middle of an unmarked black void. Then, a voice, distorted and echoing, came through their radio, calling each of them by name. It wasn't any of the missing members. It sounded like all of them speaking together in a slow, layered whisper. They followed the source of the signal and stumbled upon a clearing filled with the team's missing equipment. Cameras still recording, tents collapsed, and half-eaten food scattered on the ground. One camera was still pointed at the forest's edge. Its lens cracked, but it captured something horrifying. Tall, thin figures standing between the trees, motionless, faceless, and yet watching. That night, the last remaining member, Sarah, set up her camera and spoke directly into it, trembling. "If anyone finds this, we were wrong. This isn't a forest. It's a place that remembers." Her flashlight flickered, and behind her, faint silhouettes began to appear, growing closer. The recording ends abruptly with a loud static noise, followed by a single whisper, "Stay." Weeks later, local authorities found the remains of the camp, but not a single trace of the team. Every piece of footage retrieved from their devices showed the same impossible thing. Footage of themselves walking into the forest again and again, as if trapped in a loop that never ended. Some officers reported hearing whispers even while reviewing the evidence. To this day, the location remains off-limits, surrounded by warning signs. But occasionally, hikers claim to hear distant radio chatter, voices calling for help in broken static. Some even say they saw lights flicker deep between the trees. The mystery of the missing team has never been solved, and their final message echoes forever. The forest remembers. What really happened that night might never be known. But one thing's for sure, something inside Black Pine Forest doesn't want to be found. If you ever visit those woods, don't go alone. They say music is the language of the soul. But in Raven's Hollow, that language was twisted into something unspeakable. The first time I heard the story, I was a boy, sitting near the fireplace of my grandmother's inn. A traveler, pale and trembling, told us about a manor deep in the woods, a place where a piano still played at midnight, though the lady who owned it had been dead for 50 years. He said the sound wasn't like music at all. It was grief-made sound, each note dripping with something alive. And if you listened too long, you'd start to hear a second sound beneath it, the soft, choking sobs of someone trapped behind the keys. The woman's name was Alara Voss, a pianist of rare talent. She once performed for nobles in London before retreating to Raven's Hollow after her fiancé vanished on the eve of their wedding. Some said grief drove her mad. Others whispered that she had bargained with forces beyond. All agreed on one thing: the night she played her final piece, the sky itself wept blood. No one dared enter her manor after that. The villagers claimed that from the woods, they could see candlelight flickering through the windows and hear her music rising and falling like a dying breath. Sometimes, they said the melody would stop suddenly, followed by a scream that didn't sound human. Years passed, and the legend of Alara became just that, a story to frighten children. But when I was 20, I saw something that made me believe every word of it. I had gone hunting near the old woods, when a fog rolled in so thick I could barely see my own hands. And then, I heard it, a single note, faint, distant, carried on the wind. It grew clearer with each step, until the melody filled the air, slow and sorrowful. It wasn't coming from any living hand. I knew that at once. And when I turned toward the sound, I saw the faint glow of candles in the distance. The closer I got, the colder the air became. The trees stood like black pillars, and the fog clung to the ground as though it were alive. Then, through the mist, the manor appeared, vast, silent, and broken by time. Its windows were blind, its roof sagged, and yet from within came that perfect, mournful song. The gate was half open, rusted in place. I should have turned back then. Every instinct screamed for me to run. But the music, it pulled me forward, as if unseen hands were guiding me toward the door. Inside, The manor smelled of dust and decay. Portraits lined the hallway, their painted eyes following me wherever I moved. The sound of the piano echoed faintly, coming from the grand hall beyond the stairs. Each note vibrated through the walls like a heartbeat, steady and cold. As I approached the doors, they creaked open by themselves. The room was lit only by the moon filtering through shattered glass. And there, in the center, stood the piano, elegant but covered in a layer of gray dust. Its keys moved on their own. The melody was beautiful, haunting, like something between a lullaby and a funeral dirge. I stood frozen, watching the keys press down, one after another, forming a song that seemed to weep. Then I saw it, a faint shimmer hovering above the piano bench, a figure translucent in the shape of a woman, her hands gliding over the air where the keys moved. Her head turned slowly toward me. Though her face was pale and broken by shadow, I could still see her eyes, empty, yet filled with unbearable sorrow. And then she whispered a single word that froze my blood. "Stay." The air turned heavy, pressing down on my chest. I tried to speak, but my voice refused to come. The piano continued its song, faster now, its rhythm pulsing like a heartbeat gone mad. The figure of Alara Voss, for I knew it was her, stepped closer, her form flickering like candlelight. Behind her, I noticed something carved into the piano's lid. Names, dozens of them, etched deep into the wood, each one crossed out except the last. The final name was half-finished, as though the carver had been interrupted, and the letters looked eerily familiar. The half-carved name was mine. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair, the noise breaking the music for just a second. Alara's head snapped toward the sound, her eyes wide, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The candles flared to life, though I had seen none before, filling the room with a crimson light. The walls began to shake. The portraits along the hall fell one by one, their frames splintering. And through it all, the piano played louder, wilder, alive. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut before I reached them. A whisper filled the room. Dozens of voices layered atop one another, all crying the same thing. Play, play with her. The piano bench scraped against the floor, moving toward me on its own. Alara stood behind it now, waiting, her translucent fingers trembling above the keys. I shook my head. "No," I managed to whisper. She smiled, a small, broken smile, and suddenly, my legs gave way. Something unseen pulled me to the bench, forcing my hands toward the keys. The piano's surface felt warm, like skin. When my fingers touched the keys, a surge of pain shot through me. Not physical, but deeper. Memories that weren't mine flooded my mind. A wedding veil, a man's laughter, betrayal, blood. I felt her anguish, her madness, her endless longing. And beneath it all, something darker, something ancient. Alara's voice filled my head. "Finish it." The melody returned, twisting and writhing as my hands began to play. Each note I struck felt like a heartbeat stolen from my own chest. And when I looked down, my name was no longer half-carved. It was complete. The sound became unbearable. Each note echoed inside my skull like a scream trapped in bone. The room darkened. The candles turned blue. I could see figures forming in the shadows, pale outlines of faces, twisted in agony, whispering through the air like smoke. Alara stood beside me, her expression blank. Then, she placed her ghostly hand over mine. Cold shot through my arm, freezing every muscle in place. Her voice, soft and broken, whispered again. "You belong here now." I tried to pull away, but my hands refused to move. The music continued, not mine, not hers, but something else, something older. The faces in the shadows began to drift closer, their whispers turning into soft sobs. I realized, with a chill, that they were the other names carved into the piano. Their eyes pleaded for release. Alara looked at them too, and for a moment, sadness flickered in her gaze. Then, she turned back to me and smiled, the same smile I'd seen on her portraits, painted before her death. A sudden crash echoed from above. The ceiling groaned, dust raining down. The song faltered, and Alara's image flickered violently. For a brief instant, I saw her true face. Hollow, cracked, crawling with shadow. Her mouth opened in rage, and the piano screamed. I was thrown backward by a force I couldn't see. The bench splintered, the candles went out. The last sound I heard before everything went dark was her voice, pleading, not angry now, don't leave me alone again. When I awoke, the sun was bleeding through broken windows. The manor was silent, the piano untouched. I stumbled to my feet, dizzy, my mind fogged like the air outside. Had it been a dream, or something far worse? I looked at the piano. Its keys were still, yet the lid was open again. Carved there, at the bottom of the list of names, was mine. Not fresh, not new, but aged, weathered, as though it had always been there. I ran. Through the halls, through the fog, through the gates that groaned as I passed. The village seemed brighter when I reached it, though my chest still ached with that melody. I swore never to return, never to speak of what I saw. But silence has a way of rotting. At night, even in my own home, I hear faint music through the walls. Sometimes it's just one note, lingering like a breath. Sometimes, it's the entire song. Years have passed since that night. The manor still stands, though no one goes near it. The forest has swallowed most of the path, and the villagers pretend the music isn't real. But I know better, because last week, a traveler came through town. Pale, trembling, eyes wide with fear. He said he'd heard a piano deep in the woods, playing through the mist. And when he ran toward the sound, he swore he saw a woman waiting by the door, smiling. He asked me if I knew anything about it. I lied. I told him no such place existed anymore. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The melody played again, louder than ever, felt closer, as if the manor itself had moved toward me. And then I saw it, in the reflection of my window behind me. Faint shape, a woman in a tattered gown, her hands hovering in the air, waiting. The same eyes, the same sorrow. I turned, but she was gone. Only silence remained, and the faint smell of old wood and roses. On my desk, where there had been nothing before, lay a single piano key, yellowed with age, and carved into it, my initials. I don't know how it got there. I don't know why the melody follows me still. But every night, it grows louder, clearer, and I can almost hear her whispering, "Finish it." Last night, the piano key began to play by itself. A single note, over and over, echoing through my room until dawn. I smashed it with a hammer, but the sound didn't stop. It came from inside my head. I think she's calling me back. I dream of the manor every night now. The broken windows, the flickering candles, the endless song. And always, the same seat waiting before the piano. Empty, waiting for me. I can't fight it anymore. Tomorrow I'll return to Raven's Hollow. Maybe if I finish the song, she'll let me go. Or maybe that's what she wants. If anyone finds this journal, don't follow me. Don't go near that place. Because once you hear the melody of Holloway's curse, you'll never hear silence again. The road to Raven's Hollow was overgrown and forgotten. Trees arched overhead like twisted ribs, shutting out the sky. As I walked, the fog thickened until I could barely see my own hands. Yet, through the suffocating mist, I could hear it again, that melody. It drifted through the woods like a memory, faint but unmistakable, guiding my steps. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to hum with unseen energy. Every breath felt colder, every sound sharper, as if the forest itself was alive and listening. At one point, I thought I saw a shadow moving beside me, not walking, but gliding, keeping pace silently. When I turned to look, there was nothing but the echo of footsteps that were not my own. When I finally saw the manor through the mist, my heart nearly stopped. It looked smaller than I remembered, almost hunched under its own weight, but the windows still stared like hollow eyes. The front door hung open, waiting. As I stepped inside, the air changed, thick, cold, electric. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. The broken candles, the scattered sheets of music, the old piano at the center of the room. But there was something new carved into the wood this time. A phrase, 6 words, written in deep, uneven scratches. Play the song and set me free. I sat before the piano, trembling. The keys were cracked, yellow, but they seemed to vibrate faintly, as if waiting for my touch. When my fingers pressed the first note, the sound was clear, too clear, like something alive resonating beneath the wood. The melody flowed effortlessly, guiding my hands on its own, and with each chord, the room seemed to breathe. The portraits on the wall began to fade. The air shimmered, and shapes emerged, the same lost souls whose names I had seen carved before. They surrounded me, silent, their hollow eyes fixed on the piano, and in the midst of them she appeared, Alara. She looked more real than ever, not ghostly, not pale, but human. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes glowed with something almost gentle. For the first time, she smiled without sorrow. But when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that pressed against my chest. "You came back," she said softly. "You heard me." I nodded, unable to speak. "The song must end," she whispered. "Only then can the curse die." And before I could respond, her hand covered mine again. Not cold this time, but warm. The music swelled, filling every corner of the hall. Notes I had never learned flowed through me as if I'd always known them. Outside, thunder cracked. The world itself seemed to shudder. The souls around me lifted their heads, their faces peaceful now, dissolving into the air like mist at dawn. Alara's form began to fade as well. Her smile trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. But just before she vanished, her expression changed. Her eyes widened in horror. She looked at the piano, then back at me and screamed, "No, it's not done." Before I could react, the piano screamed. Not a sound, a scream. The wood cracked open, and from inside poured a black mist thick as tar. It swirled around me, whispering words I couldn't understand, wrapping me like a shroud. Alara's voice was gone. In her place, something else spoke. Deeper, older, full of hunger. "You played the wrong song," it hissed. "Her freedom is your cage." And then, the darkness surged forward and swallowed everything. When I awoke, I was sitting at the piano again. The candles were lit, the hall silent. But the walls, they were different, newer, cleaner. The manor wasn't in ruins anymore. I looked around in confusion. Footsteps echoed from the doorway. A young woman entered, wide-eyed, holding a small notebook. She smiled nervously. "Hi, I'm here to research the legend of Alara Holloway." She didn't see me at first. She walked straight past, touching the piano gently, tracing the carvings on its surface. Then her eyes fell on the newest one, the name carved freshly into the wood. She whispered it aloud. It was mine, and as she said it, the piano gave a soft, familiar hum. The candles flickered, and I realized, with a cold dread, that I wasn't breathing anymore. She froze. The air grew colder, and her breath came out in mist. Slowly, she turned her head toward me, and her eyes widened. I tried to speak, to warn her, but no sound came out. Instead, the piano began to play by itself once more. The same melody. Her notebook fell to the ground as she stared in horror. And through the rising fog, I saw Alara standing behind her, smiling. Now I understand. The song never ends, it only changes its player. Alara was freed, but her place had to be taken. And I foolishly sat down to play. If you ever find the manor of Raven's Hollow, and hear the faint echo of a piano through the mist, don't follow it. Don't listen, because every melody has a price, and this one never stops collecting.
In the cold mountains of Asia, there's a prison that was erased from every map. No records, no survivors, and no answers. Locals still whisper about screams echoing through the fog and lights flickering deep inside the ruins. Tonight, You're about to hear what really happened inside Quan Ly Prison, a place where the living feared the dead, and the dead never left. This is not just a story, it's a forgotten chapter of history. In the remote mountains of northern Asia, surrounded by endless forests and rivers shrouded in mist, there stood a prison the world was never meant to know about. Quan Ly Prison. Built in the early 1950s under the guise of a state reformation facility, its true purpose remained hidden beneath layers of secrecy and fear. The surrounding villages spoke of strange lights in the night and cries that echoed across the valley long after midnight. Travelers who ventured too close often returned pale and silent, or never returned at all. For decades, the government denied the prison's existence, erasing it from maps and official records, yet whispers persisted. Stories of prisoners who vanished without trial, of guards who lost their minds, and of experiments that blurred the line between punishment and the supernatural. In 1974, a journalist named Takahiro Watanabe, driven by curiosity and rumors of human experiments, decided to uncover the truth. With a small camera, a tape recorder, and a forged pass, he crossed the borders of fear and entered a place where the living and the dead shared the same walls. As he approached the rusted gates, the air itself seemed heavier, thick with the stench of decay and something unexplainable, like electricity and rot mixed together. The watchtower loomed above him, its spotlight broken, swaying in the cold wind. He pressed record. That sound, the faint click of the tape, would become the last trace of his existence. When Takahiro Watanabe stepped inside Quan Ly Prison, his camera lens fogged instantly, as if the air itself rejected intrusion. The corridor stretched endlessly, lined with steel doors that were half-eaten by rust. Every step echoed like a whisper that didn't belong to him. The smell was suffocating, a blend of mold, burned oil, and something faintly sweet, the unmistakable scent of death. He switched on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal faded writing on the walls. Korean characters, scratched in panic, read, "It watches when you sleep." The journalist whispered the phrase into his recorder, unaware that the faint static between his words wasn't just interference. It was a low, drawn-out breathing. Deeper inside, he found cells filled with objects that didn't belong in a prison. Children's shoes, torn photographs, religious charms nailed to the walls. The deeper he went, the colder it became. There were no guards, no signs of recent life, only the metallic hum of the pipes and a distant sound that resembled a human voice calling from below. He followed it. The staircase led him down to a sublevel that wasn't on any blueprint. The metal steps moaned under his weight, and the flashlight flickered as if struggling against something unseen. At the bottom lay a massive steel door, slightly ajar. On its surface, carved deep into the metal, was a single word: silence. When he pushed it open, a gush of stale air escaped, carrying with it the cold of years. Inside, rows of hospital beds filled the chamber, each covered with a thin white sheet. He counted 17, but what made his hands tremble wasn't the number. It was the fact that the sheets were rising and falling, as if something beneath them was still breathing. He backed away, whispering into his recorder again, describing what he saw, when suddenly the lights on his camera turned off. In the darkness, one sheet slid silently off a bed, then another. The smell of iron grew stronger. He ran back toward the stairs, but the way behind him had changed. The steps were gone, replaced by a flat, seamless wall. He wasn't in a prison anymore. He was inside something alive. Hours passed, or maybe days. His watch had stopped, and the air felt thick like water. When he replayed the last recording, the tape hissed violently before a faint voice emerged. A child's voice whispering in Korean, repeating one phrase: "Help us wake up." He looked around and saw small handprints smeared across the walls, leading to a metal hatch in the corner. It was bolted shut. He aimed the flashlight at it, and for the first time, the beam bent, literally bent, as if the darkness was bending light itself. Something was moving on the other side, scratching slowly, patiently. He tried to leave a mark on the wall, something to prove he had been there. But the chalk he used dissolved on contact, leaving only a faint shadow of his writing. The static in his recorder grew louder, forming what sounded like multiple overlapping voices. Some called his name. Others laughed like distant echoes of madness. In a drawer near one of the hospital beds, he found an old leather-bound journal. The pages were brittle, written in both Korean and Japanese, filled with dates, numbers, and sketches of human anatomy, but distorted. Each drawing showed bodies missing faces, organs rearranged, and symbols written over them in red ink. The last entry, dated October 3rd, 1971, simply read, "They cannot die if they never wake." When he turned the page, something wet smeared his fingers. The ink wasn't ink, it was fresh. And beneath the words, faint fingerprints pressed into the paper, from the inside. The camera caught his shaking hands as he whispered, "Someone's still here." But before he could speak again, the door he entered through began to close on its own, inch by inch, metal grinding against stone. The sound filled the corridor like a scream. He ran, but the light at the end of the hall went out completely. Then, in that perfect blackness, the recorder captured a final whisper, his own voice saying, "I think it saw me." Takahiro pressed his palm against the wall, trying to steady himself. The concrete was cold, too cold, and it pulsed faintly beneath his skin. He took a cautious step forward, only to realize the corridor wasn't the same. What had once been a straight path now curved slightly to the left, and the door he had entered through had completely vanished. The building was breathing. He raised the camera, its battery blinking red, and panned slowly across the walls. They weren't smooth anymore. From within the cracks, faint outlines of faces appeared, distorted impressions, as if people had been pressed into the concrete from the inside. Their mouths were open, but no sound came out, only a faint vibration that made his chest ache. He whispered to himself, "This can't be real." Yet every breath he took came out in a visible mist, even though the air wasn't cold enough for that. The lens caught movement in the distance, a figure standing motionless at the far end of the corridor. It was dressed in the same journalist jacket he wore, and when it turned its head, it had his own face. He dropped the camera. He backed away from the doppelganger, heart pounding violently, until his back hit another door that hadn't been there before. It was wooden, strange considering everything else was metal and concrete. Without thinking, he pushed it open and stumbled inside. The room beyond was round and bare, except for hundreds of old microphones hanging from the ceiling, their cables like black veins twisting down from above. Each one whispered softly, static, words, crying. He realized they weren't broadcasting sound, they were recording. A massive reel-to-reel machine sat in the corner, still turning. On its tape was his own voice, repeating the same phrase he hadn't yet said. "I shouldn't have followed the voice." Then the microphones fell silent, all at once, before replaying another voice, not his. A woman's whisper, trembling with fear. "If you hear your own echo, run." The door behind him slammed shut. Takahiro tried to find another exit, but the room had changed again. The microphones were gone, and in their place were small, square mirrors, hundreds of them, each reflecting not him, but a different version of himself. One was younger, another older, one with blood down his cheek, another with eyes completely black. He called out, "Who are you?" And all the reflections answered at once, in perfect unison. "You are what was left." The mirrors began to vibrate violently, and from within them came images, flashes of the prison in different times. Guards dragging prisoners into dark rooms, experiments under flickering lights, shadows watching through glass. And then, the faces of those prisoners pressed into walls, screaming silently. The journalist realized the horror. This place didn't trap bodies, it trapped memories. Everyone who entered left something behind, their thoughts, their fear, their reflection. And the more the prison consumed, the more alive it became. When he looked down, he saw faint red lines crawling beneath the skin of his wrist, forming symbols identical to the ones drawn in the journal. They were moving. He tried to rub them off, but the more he pressed, the deeper they burned. His body was being rewritten. He stumbled toward the corner, whispering incoherently into the recorder, pleading for help that would never come. The air vibrated with a low hum, like the sound of electricity running through flesh. Then the lights in the ceiling began to flicker again, one by one, each flicker showing the shadow of something standing behind him. He turned slowly. The figure was tall, featureless, its head tilted slightly, as if studying him. It raised a hand, mirroring his every movement. Then, with deliberate slowness, it reached toward his chest, and the symbol under his skin began to glow. The figure whispered in a voice that was both his and not his, "Now, you belong." Weeks later, the rescue team found the journalist's van parked miles away from the prison. The engine was cold, the doors unlocked, and his camera sat on the passenger seat, still recording, its memory full. The footage ended abruptly, but the last frame showed something impossible. A wall covered with hundreds of faces, and one of them, unmistakably, was Takahiro's. His eyes were open, and they were looking outward. The prison was sealed again. The government declared the case closed, but locals still claim that at night, if you walk near the ruins of Quanli, you can hear a faint sound, a man whispering through static. "I think it saw me." Months after Takahiro's disappearance, the Japanese embassy requested a joint investigation with local authorities. 3 officials, 2 men and a woman, arrived at the remote site, equipped with modern instruments and protective suits. They expected to find a derelict ruin. Instead, they found a structure eerily intact, its gates sealed by rust yet humming faintly, as though power still flowed within. When they breached the main corridor, their radios failed instantly. The sound turned to static, then to whispers in languages none of them recognized. They pressed on, marking their path with paint, a bright red line along the walls. But the further they went, the thinner the line became, until it vanished altogether. Their last recorded transmission came from Officer Lee. "We're hearing something moving inside the walls. It's following our voices." After that, nothing. Days later, the search team found only their equipment outside, untouched, batteries drained. The paint on the prison wall, which had been bright red, was now a deep, dried brown, like old blood. Weeks after the failed investigation, a local farmer reported something strange. The lights inside the old Quanli prison were glowing again, faintly, but unmistakably. He claimed he saw silhouettes moving behind barred windows, even though the place had been sealed for decades. The government dismissed the report, but journalists began flocking to the site, driven by curiosity and fear. Satellite images confirmed the phenomenon. On certain nights, an orange light pulsed from within the compound, matching the rhythm of a human heartbeat. Engineers tried to explain it as heat signatures caused by residual energy or chemical reactions. But one infrared scan revealed something no one could explain. Moving heat signatures shaped like people, pacing the halls in perfect unison. A technician who analyzed the footage quit his job days later. He left a note on his desk. "They're not ghosts, they're the echoes of people who never stopped living there." Years later, construction crews attempting to demolish the ruins discovered a sealed hatch beneath the central courtyard. It was made of heavy steel and engraved with the same symbols that Takahiro had described in his notes. Despite orders to stop, 2 workers pried it open and vanished into the dark shaft below. Rescue teams descended hours later, finding a tunnel that led to a massive underground chamber. The walls were lined with thousands of tiny metal plaques, each etched with a name, a date, and a short sentence. Some were written in Korean, others in Japanese, Chinese, even Russian. They realized what it was: a registry of the forgotten. Every prisoner who had vanished without record was listed here, including names from the supposed ghost stories. In the center of the chamber stood a single chair, bolted to the floor. On its surface, fresh blood. When one of the rescuers leaned closer, the lights on his helmet flickered, and he swore he heard something breathing right behind him. After that discovery, researchers installed sensitive audio equipment around the prison perimeter. What they captured baffled scientists for years. A constant low-frequency vibration between 17 and 19 hertz, the range known to induce fear and disorientation in humans. But what truly terrified them was that the sound carried patterns, almost like a language. When played through a spectral analyzer, the signal revealed waveforms shaped like faces, distorted, screaming faces, repeating every 43 seconds. No natural explanation fit. Linguists attempted to decode it, finding fragments resembling ancient prayers mixed with modern Korean phrases like, "We are still here." The audio was banned from public release after several technicians reported nightmares and hallucinations. One claimed that after listening to the signal for hours, he began hearing whispers in his own home, the same voices begging him to open the door. In 1981, a shortwave radio operator in Seoul intercepted a faint transmission originating near the old prison site. It lasted only 4 minutes, but what it contained defied all logic. It was Takahiro's voice, older, weaker, but unmistakable. He repeated one sentence over and over, "The walls remember." Investigators traced the signal, but when they arrived, the entire prison compound had collapsed overnight. The ruins were still warm, as if they'd been burning from within, yet no signs of fire were found. The broadcast tape was analyzed multiple times. Beneath Takahiro's voice, another could be heard faintly, layered beneath the static, whispering in a dozen languages at once. And when slowed down, it formed a single phrase: "Do not rebuild what was meant to forget." One humid night in 1977, the guards on night duty began hearing the unmistakable sound of chains dragging across the hallway. Not the usual clanking from the cells, but a slow, deliberate scraping that echoed like someone being pulled against their will. When the guards checked the cells, every inmate was asleep. The noise continued, moving up the corridor, and one guard, braver than the rest, followed it to the solitary confinement wing. There, under the flickering light, he saw the outlines of prisoners, hundreds of them, walking in a procession, heads bowed, wrists shackled, but completely transparent. The guard fainted instantly. When he woke, his hair had turned almost entirely white. He resigned the next morning and never spoke about it again. Deep within the oldest section of the prison stood a single cell, cell 34B, that no prisoner was ever assigned to. The official record said it was unsafe due to structural damage, but former inmates whispered that something lived inside it. In 1978, a new warden decided to prove the rumors false and placed a repeat offender inside. Within an hour, the man screamed so violently that 3 guards rushed in. The prisoner was gone, vanished. The only thing left behind was a message scratched into the wall: "You can't contain the damned." The warden sealed the cell with bricks the same day. In 1979, during maintenance in the warden's office, workers discovered a set of old reel-to-reel tapes labeled Dr. Kuroda Sessions. The doctor, a prison psychiatrist, had disappeared in 1975. When the tapes were played, what started as normal therapy sessions slowly turned into something chilling. By the last tape, the doctor's voice was trembling, saying, "They whisper to me now. I can hear them through the walls." Then came a deep growl, not human, followed by silence. The final seconds captured a faint plea: "Don't open cell 34B." In 1981, the entire island experienced a total blackout that lasted for 7 hours. When power was restored, the guards discovered that all 73 prisoners in Block D were missing. Their cells were locked from the inside, and their uniforms were neatly folded on their beds. Security footage showed static for the entire duration of the blackout, except for one frame, where dozens of figures could be seen standing in the hallway, facing the camera, their faces blurred and eyes glowing white. The footage was destroyed under government order, but a few guards swore they could still see those glowing eyes when they closed their own. By 1982, The prison was permanently shut down. Officials declared it unsafe due to unexplainable structural degradation, but everyone on the island knew the real reason. No one wanted to stay another night there. During the final evacuation, a group of soldiers entered to ensure all areas were empty. Only 5 of the 10 returned. The survivors refused to speak, but one of them, before dying in 1992, confessed to a priest that they saw a wall full of faces, all screaming silently. Today, the ruins of the prison remain forbidden to visitors, surrounded by fences and silence. Yet locals still claim to see lights flickering inside on stormy nights. What happened inside Quan Ly prison was buried, but not forgotten. Some say the cries can still be heard on quiet winter nights, carried by the wind through the ruins. If you ever find yourself near those mountains, don't look back, because some stories don't want to be told.
In the remote countryside of Devonshire stood a forgotten mansion known only as Hollow Manor. Locals whispered that it was cursed, abandoned after a fire nearly consumed it in the late 1800s. Yet, what most people didn't know was that deep within its charred halls, hidden under dust and ivy, remained a marble statue unlike any other. The villagers said it wasn't carved, it was created. No one remembered who brought it there or when it arrived, only that it was found standing in the grand hall the morning after the fire. Some claimed they saw it move just slightly when no one was looking. Others swore they heard faint breathing echoing from the stone itself. And in the years that followed, anyone who dared to enter the manor never came back quite the same. Decades later, an art historian named Dr. Adrian Wells arrived in the nearby village of Meryton. His passion was discovering forgotten sculptures, and when he heard about the marble figure in Hollow Manor, his curiosity became obsession. The locals warned him, "Never go near the statue, it watches you back." Adrian laughed it off, calling it rural superstition. One cold morning in November, armed with lanterns, notebooks, and an old camera, he ventured into the ruins alone. The gates creaked open as if resisting him. Inside, the air was thick with damp and silence. And there, in the center of the grand hall, stood the statue, tall, elegant, almost human. Its face was turned slightly upward, eyes closed, as if frozen in prayer or pain. Adrian circled the statue slowly, admiring the craftsmanship. The marble was impossibly smooth, like real skin, and cold to the touch. He noticed faint cracks around the statue's eyes, thin, spiderweb-like veins of dark gray stone that hadn't been caused by time, but by something else. As he leaned closer to sketch it, his lantern flickered, and he thought, just for an instant, that the statue's lips had parted. His pencil fell to the ground. He froze, staring. But when he blinked, it was still. The silence pressed against his ears. Imagination, he muttered to himself, but deep down, his hands wouldn't stop trembling. As the evening shadows lengthened, Adrian set up his camera on a tripod, determined to capture the statue before nightfall. Each flash illuminated the ruined hall, the broken chandeliers, the blackened walls, the dust motes dancing in the cold air. Yet each photograph he took showed something slightly different. The statue's head tilted, its arms shifted, the mouth barely open. He convinced himself it was just angles and light. But as he flipped through the photos under the lantern glow, he froze. In the last picture, the statue's eyes were open, looking directly at him. A chill rushed through his body, his breath visible in the sudden cold. He turned his lantern toward the figure. It stood as before, serene, motionless. Yet the faint echo of a woman's sigh filled the hall, so soft it could have been the wind. But the windows were sealed with soot and rot. Adrian packed his equipment quickly, whispering to himself, "It's just the air, just the air." But even as he left, he could feel those unseen eyes following him until he reached the gate. That night, at the inn, Adrian couldn't sleep. The photographs lay spread out on his desk. The last one, the one where the statue stared, seemed to throb faintly under the lamplight, as if the image itself was alive. He blinked, and for a split second he thought he saw the pupils move. He tore his gaze away, heart pounding. Around midnight, a faint piano note echoed through the room. He froze. There was no piano in the inn. Yet the melody continued, slow, sorrowful, hauntingly familiar. He followed the sound down the hallway, past empty rooms and flickering candles. The tune stopped at his door when he returned, and his photographs were scattered across the floor, forming the shape of a face. The marble woman's face. By morning, Adrian decided to return to the manor. He couldn't explain the fear gnawing inside him, nor the strange pull that seemed to call him back. He packed his lantern and camera again, his hands shaking as he climbed the overgrown path. The gates were already open, though he swore he had locked them. Inside, the hall was colder than before, the air thick and metallic, like the smell of blood. The statue stood where he'd left it, but this time the floor beneath was wet. A thin trail of dark liquid ran from the statue's base toward the wall. He knelt to inspect it, and his breath caught. It wasn't water. It was blood. The blood trail led to a mirror shattered long ago. Beneath its cracked surface, he saw movement. A woman's reflection standing behind him. He turned sharply, the lantern swinging, but there was nothing. When he faced the mirror again, the reflection was closer, her eyes hollow, her mouth whispering soundlessly. Words began to etch themselves on the dusty glass, written by an invisible hand. "Free me." Adrian stumbled backward, his mind spiraling between logic and terror. He whispered, "Who are you?" The flame flickered violently, and for a heartbeat, the reflection smiled. Then everything went black. He awoke hours later, lying on the cold marble floor. His lantern was shattered, his notebook soaked in crimson smears. The statue had moved. It now stood closer to where he had fallen, one hand slightly outstretched. Its eyes were open. He scrambled back, breath ragged. "This isn't real," he kept repeating. But then he noticed something horrifying. The statue's marble hand was dripping fresh blood, the same blood that stained his notebook. He looked down at his arm. A deep gash ran across his wrist, though he hadn't felt a thing. Panic overtook reason. Adrian fled the manor, running through the tangled woods, not daring to look back. Yet with every step, he felt the weight of unseen footsteps behind him, synchronized with his own. When he reached the village, he burst into the church, collapsing before the priest. Between sobs, he spoke of the statue, the mirror, the blood. The priest paled, whispering prayers under his breath. "That statue, it was made from her," he finally said. "The lady of the manor, burned in the fire. They say her soul fused with the marble." Adrian didn't return to Hollow Manor again, but the statue didn't stay there either. A week later, the manor collapsed completely. The villagers searched the ruins. The statue was gone. No traces, no fragments. Only a single photograph remained, the one Adrian had taken that first night. In it, the marble woman stood as before, except now, she was smiling. And her eyes, they were open. Days passed, yet Adrian couldn't escape the feeling that the statue was still watching him. Every night, he'd wake up drenched in sweat, certain he heard footsteps pacing the corridor outside his room. The sound was slow, deliberate, heel, pause, heel. Once, he opened the door suddenly, but the hallway was empty, the air heavy with the faint scent of burnt jasmine. He started keeping the lantern lit all night, though the flame often dimmed without reason, flickering as if someone exhaled beside it. He began dreaming of marble, cold hands pressing against his chest, a woman's voice whispering, "You freed me. Now let me live." When he awoke one dawn, he found fingerprints on the inside of his window, smooth, pale, and dusted with gray powder. Marble dust. He tried to leave Meriton, packed his bags before sunrise, left a note for the innkeeper, and drove his carriage toward the coast. But halfway through the journey, a dense fog descended, thick as smoke. The horse grew restless, neighing and refusing to move forward. Adrian stepped down to calm it, and there, by the roadside, stood a figure. It was a woman, pale as moonlight, wearing tattered lace, her eyes hollow yet shimmering faintly. She wasn't breathing. He stumbled backward, whispering, "No!" The woman tilted her head, the same delicate movement as the statue's. When she raised her hand, her skin cracked slightly, and beneath it, Adrian saw stone. Then the fog swallowed her, and she vanished. But when he looked at his hands, fine gray dust clung to his palms. By the time he returned to the village, because somehow, no matter which road he took, he always ended up back there, the townspeople avoided him. Children crossed the street when he passed, and the priest stopped answering his door. Adrian's eyes grew hollow, his voice weak, and his skin pale like marble. He spent his nights muttering to himself, sketching the same face over and over again, the woman from the statue. Some villagers swore they saw candlelight flickering in his window at midnight, and a second shadow moving behind him. They said sometimes a woman's laughter echoed faintly from his room, though he lived alone. One morning, the innkeeper found his door open and the room empty, the air thick with dust. On the desk lay a single marble finger, smooth, cold, freshly broken. A month later, a stranger arrived in Meryton, a collector from London, seeking artifacts from the ruins of Hollow Manor. He heard whispers about the historian who'd vanished, and curiosity drove him to investigate. The villagers begged him not to go near the manor, but he laughed, just as Adrian had. When he reached the collapsed site, the air grew colder, heavier. Among the stones and ivy, he found something gleaming. A statue, half buried, its surface clean and flawless, though the mansion around it was nothing but ash. The collector brushed away the dirt and stared. The statue was perfect, lifelike. A man this time, his name carved faintly into the base, A. Wells. That night, the collector brought the statue back to his London gallery. He admired it, unaware of the faint warmth radiating from the marble, or the way its eyelids twitched under lamplight. He told his assistant, "This piece will make history." But as midnight struck, the gallery lights flickered. The night guard later swore he heard footsteps in the exhibition hall, and a man whispering, "Free me!" When morning came, the statue stood in the center of the room, and beside it, a second figure unfinished, emerging from the same block of marble. His face was beginning to take shape. For the next few weeks, strange events plagued the gallery. Visitors claimed to hear faint whispers near the statue, like someone speaking from behind glass. Some swore the marble eyes followed them as they walked by, while others said they smelled burnt jasmine, though no candles were ever lit. The curator dismissed it as imagination, but he started noticing something himself. Every morning, the statue's position seemed slightly different. His head tilted a little more, its lips parted just a fraction, and sometimes the dust around its base formed patterns, footprints, small and human-like, leading toward the curator's office. He stopped sleeping at the gallery, but the dreams followed him home. In his dreams, he saw Adrian Wells not as a man, but as stone given breath. Adrian's face was twisted, trapped halfway between agony and reverence, whispering endlessly, "It needs form. It needs life." Behind him, a figure moved, the woman, the first statue, her eyes empty but alive with hunger. Every night she came closer. Every night, he woke up with the taste of dust on his tongue and a faint bruise on his chest, shaped like a hand. He tried to destroy the statue once, lifting a hammer high above his head. But before he could strike, the marble eyes blinked, and for a heartbeat, he felt an overwhelming sadness, as if something ancient and lonely was pleading not to die. He dropped the hammer and whispered, "I'm sorry." The next morning, his assistant found him sitting before the statue, motionless, eyes open but unseeing. He was pale, his hands coated in a thin layer of marble dust. The statue beside him had changed, his expression softer, almost human, and on its chest, faint cracks formed in the shape of veins, as if blood might soon flow beneath the surface. Police called it exhaustion, though none could explain the faint echo that filled the hall when they moved the statue. A whisper, barely audible, "Thank you." That night, The gallery closed for maintenance. It never reopened. Months passed. The gallery was abandoned, its windows covered in grime, its halls silent except for the wind. But sometimes, late at night, the street lamps outside flickered, and passers-by swore they saw movement behind the glass. A silhouette shifting, watching. The legend of the hollow statue spread through London, inspiring ghost stories and urban myths. Yet one winter evening, a young sculptor named Eliza broke into the gallery, seeking inspiration. She carried a chisel, a lantern, and a heart full of ambition. She found the statue at the center of the dust-filled hall, standing tall and magnificent. "You're beautiful," she whispered. "I can finish what they started." And when she touched the marble, it was warm. The next morning, a passerby noticed the gallery doors ajar. Inside, everything was covered in dust except the statue. It gleamed, flawless, and beside it stood a second figure, smaller, feminine. Her face half-formed, her eyes still closed. On the floor lay Eliza's tools, and a single note written in hurried strokes. It whispered my name. From that day, no one entered the gallery again. But those who walk past it at night still claim to hear two voices inside. One male, one female, softly humming an unfinished song. 3 weeks after Eliza's disappearance, the police sealed the gallery. No family came forward, no friends filed a report. It was as if she had been erased from every record. But those who lived near the old Meryton Street swore that at night, the lights inside the gallery would flicker to life. Some heard the faint sound of a chisel tapping stone, slow and rhythmic, echoing through the walls. A homeless man who slept across the street said he saw movement inside. A woman sculpting something under a lantern glow, though no one else believed him. When he tried to prove it, breaking a window and peeking in, he vanished before dawn. Only his coat remained, folded neatly on the doorstep, dusted with marble powder. Months passed again, and the story turned into rumor, until the gallery was purchased by a private collector, Mr. Alistair Cray, a man obsessed with cursed art. He restored the building and held a grand reopening, declaring that the statue of Hollow Manor would be the centerpiece of his exhibition. On the night of the unveiling, the guests were captivated. The two statues, the original male and the half-formed female, stood side by side, perfect in balance and beauty. Some guests whispered that their expressions were almost tender. But when the lights dimmed for the curator's speech, someone screamed. Both statues were now holding hands. The crowd thought it a trick, clever lighting, perhaps a hidden mechanism. But Mr. Cray's smile faltered when he noticed something else. The female statue's face, once incomplete, was now whole, perfect, and her eyes were open. The marble gleamed with a lifelike sheen, veins of faint gray pulsing beneath its surface. Suddenly, the chandeliers flickered violently. The floor trembled. One of the guests stumbled backward, gasping as blood trickled from her nose. Every mirror in the room cracked at once. The sound was deafening, and when the lights went out completely, the last thing anyone heard was the soft sound of footsteps. Not hurried, not human, just slow, deliberate steps moving closer. When dawn came, the gallery was empty. The doors locked from the inside. Police broke in, finding overturned tables, shattered glass, and dozens of coats left behind, as if every guest had vanished mid-breath. In the center of the hall stood the two statues, unchanged, except for one haunting detail. Each now wore an expression of peace, their hands joined over a small third figure between them, a child. The marble child's eyes were closed, but on its lips rested the faintest smile. No one could explain it. The statues were removed, stored in separate crates, and shipped to different museums across Europe. But within months, both institutions burned down in unexplained fires. Years later, a historian researching the fires noticed a disturbing pattern. In each incident, witnesses described hearing soft footsteps moments before the blaze, followed by the faint hum of a lullaby echoing through the corridors. One elderly guard from the Paris Museum swore he saw silhouettes of 3 figures walking hand in hand through the flames, untouched by them. He died in his sleep that night, clutching a small marble hand no one could identify. And today, some say if you visit the ruins of Hollow Manor, you can still hear chiseling in the dark and a whisper behind you saying softly, "The sculpture isn't finished yet." The legend of the hollow statue refused to die. Artists spoke of it in whispers, and collectors traded rumors like forbidden relics. A century after its first creation, a university in Oxford announced a shocking discovery. A crate sealed since 1912 had been found in an abandoned cellar beneath the art department. Inside, beneath rotted cloth and dust, lay fragments of marble, smooth, white, and still warm to the touch. Among the fragments, they found a journal bound in cracked leather, its pages filled with sketches, diagrams, and frantic handwriting. The last entry read, "They are not statues, they are vessels, and one remains incomplete." The handwriting matched that of Dr. Adrian Wells. A team of researchers began reconstructing the fragments, driven by curiosity and the promise of fame. But strange things started happening in the laboratory. Equipment failed, lights flickered, security cameras showed brief, distorted images of figures standing near the marble pieces when no one was there. One night, Professor Lane, the lead restorer, stayed behind to finish cataloging the fragments. At midnight, he heard the faint sound of chiseling. He thought it came from the next room, but when he entered, the sound stopped. The air was heavy, the smell of stone dust thick. On his workbench lay a single new piece of marble, smooth and freshly cut. But no one else had access to the lab. He checked the camera footage the next morning. At exactly 12:03 a.m., a silhouette appeared beside him, tall, motionless, and its reflection in the glass was smiling. Days later, Professor Lane's assistant entered the lab to find the marble fragments arranged differently. The pieces now formed the faint outline of a human torso, incomplete but unmistakably alive in form. She swore she saw the chest rise slightly, as though it were breathing. Panicking, she called the police. By the time they arrived, Lane was gone. The marble figure, however, had changed again. A faint hand now reached outward, touching the edge of the table. Beneath it, carved into the wood, were 4 chilling words. "I hear you, Adrian." The case was closed as psychological breakdown. But the assistant left Oxford the next day, claiming she still heard tapping at night from inside her walls. Years passed again. The rebuilt fragments disappeared from university archives, and rumors spread that a wealthy collector had purchased them privately. No one knew where they were taken until recently. A viral video surfaced online. A man live streaming from his basement, showing a marble sculpture he claimed to have inherited from his grandfather. The statue was tall, elegant, its eyes closed, its lips curved in a serene half-smile. Midway through the stream, viewers noticed something the man didn't. The statue's hand moved. Slowly, gracefully, it reached toward the camera. The video cut off abruptly. The user's account was deleted within hours, but copies of the clip still circulate under one name: The Return of Hollow. Today, Hollow Manor stands in ruins, its stones overgrown with ivy and silence. Locals avoid it, but sometimes tourists wander too close, drawn by the story. Those who do say they feel watched, not from the windows but from the ground itself. And on moonless nights, if you stand near the crumbled hall and listen closely, you might hear it again. The faint scrape of metal on stone, like a chisel carving flesh. Then a whisper, so close it feels like breath on your neck. Art never dies. It only waits to be finished. And when you turn around, there's always one more statue than before.
It started as a quiet night in a small American town. But what police discovered inside the Caldwell house would haunt investigators for decades. Strange symbols on the walls, a vanished family, and a single tape that recorded the final screams. Tonight, we uncover the forgotten truth behind one of the most chilling, unsolved murders in American history: the haunting mystery of the Caldwell house. In the quiet rural town of Silver Creek, Oregon, nothing ever really happened. The town was surrounded by dense pine forests, a single gas station, and a church that rang its bells every Sunday at 9 sharp. Life was simple, predictable, until the night of October 14, 1976. That night, Silver Creek lost its silence. At 2:47 a.m., a call came into the local sheriff's office. The voice on the line was trembling, panicked. It was Mary Thompson, a young nurse who lived alone on the edge of town. She reported seeing lights in her backyard and hearing what she described as a child crying in the woods. The dispatcher told her to stay inside, lock the doors, and wait for deputies. When officers arrived 20 minutes later, the house was dark. The front door was open. Inside, they found signs of a struggle, a broken lamp, overturned furniture, and a small trail of blood leading to the back door. But Mary Thompson was gone. The only clue left behind was a tape recorder on the kitchen counter, still running. On the tape, a woman's voice whispered, "Please, not again," followed by a single sharp sound, like something metal dragging across the floor. From that night forward, Silver Creek would never be the same. Sheriff Daniel Harlow had served in Silver Creek for over 20 years, but nothing in his career had prepared him for what he saw that night. The moment he stepped into Mary Thompson's house, a chill ran down his spine. There was something unnatural about the silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the feeling that the air itself was holding its breath. The crime scene looked staged, yet chaotic. The blood on the floor had already dried, suggesting at least an hour had passed since the incident. A single coffee mug lay shattered beside the sofa, and the television was still on, frozen on static, as if the broadcast had ended mid-sentence. In the kitchen, the recorder was the key. Sheriff Harlow played the tape again and again, hoping to catch some detail of a voice, a sound, a clue. The last thing heard was the faint hum of electricity, followed by a distant whisper that none of the officers could identify. They sent the tape to the Portland State Forensics Lab, marking it as evidence number 001. Outside, Harlow noticed tire tracks in the wet soil, wide and deep, like those of an old pickup truck. But when they followed the trail, it ended abruptly in the forest, as if the vehicle had simply vanished. 2 days later, the police began a full search of the nearby woods. Over 50 volunteers joined in, combing through the thick forest with flashlights and dogs. For 3 days, they found nothing. No body, no belongings, no trace of Mary Thompson. But on the 4th day, something strange happened. Deputy Elliot Ward, who had been assigned to organize evidence, discovered that several reports related to the case had disappeared overnight. The recording log was missing, and so were the crime scene photos. At first, they suspected human error, but soon they realized something more deliberate. The files had not been misplaced, they had been removed. When Harlow questioned his team, everyone denied touching the evidence. Then, the sheriff received an anonymous call from a payphone near the town diner. A distorted male voice whispered, "Stop digging. She's where she wanted to be." The line went dead. From that day, the case began to feel cursed. Officers complained of strange dreams, of whispers echoing in their patrol radios at night. Some claimed to see a woman standing in the trees when they drove past Mary's house. None dared to stop. A week later, the forensic lab in Portland contacted Sheriff Harlow with a report. The analysts claimed the recording was corrupted. Nearly half the tape had been wiped clean. Yet during the restoration process, they discovered fragments of background noise that didn't match any known source. Low-frequency tones resembling heartbeats, and an intermittent whisper repeating a name. Daniel. That was Harlow's name. Disturbed, the sheriff asked the lab to stop the analysis immediately. But the next day, the lab reported a break-in. The storage room containing the tape was destroyed, the equipment smashed, and the analyst, a man named Dr. Harris, had vanished without a trace. His car was still in the parking lot. When Harlow arrived, he found something written on the broken glass window in what looked like red ink. "You heard it too." No one ever found Dr. Harris again. As weeks passed, Silver Creek tried to return to normal, but fear lingered in the air like fog. Then on November 2nd, a hunter named George Milton came into the sheriff's office carrying a torn piece of fabric. He claimed he'd found it near an abandoned cabin 10 miles north of town, and he swore it belonged to Mary Thompson. The cabin was known among locals as the Red House, a hunting shack built in the 1930s and left to decay. When the officers arrived, they found the door hanging off its hinges, the inside coated in thick dust. Yet in the center of the room stood a chair, perfectly clean, as if waiting for someone. On the walls, faint handprints, small and childlike, covered the wood. And on the floor, etched into the dirt, were words written shakily, "She never left." In the corner, they found an old metal tape recorder. It was the same brand as Mary's. When they pressed play, it emitted only static, until a woman's voice whispered, barely audible, "Help! He's still here." Sheriff Harlow ordered the entire area around the cabin to be sealed off. No one was allowed to enter without clearance, but rumors spread fast in Silver Creek. Everyone wanted to see the cursed house where Mary Thompson was last heard. By the next morning, crowds gathered at the forest's edge, whispering prayers and stories about the place. Inside, the forensics team worked for hours. The dust on the floor was centuries thick, yet the chair remained spotless, as though someone had cleaned it that very morning. A faint smell of iron filled the air. Not blood, but something colder, metallic, unsettling. One of the officers, a young recruit named Mason Doyle, claimed to hear faint breathing near the walls. He swore the sound came from behind the wooden panels, though there was no cavity behind them. When he pressed his ear closer, he fainted instantly. Later at the hospital, Mason described what he saw before blacking out. A woman's reflection in the wall, watching me with her eyes wide open, but there was no mirror. That night, Sheriff Harlow ordered the site to be closed indefinitely, but the cabin didn't stay quiet. Locals began reporting strange red lights flickering between the trees after midnight, always coming from the direction of the Red House. As the case grew colder, Harlow turned to the town's historical archives for any clue about the cabin's origins. He found that the property once belonged to the Walden family, settlers from the late 1800s who mysteriously vanished one winter. The only remaining document was a coroner's note from 1892, describing an unnatural silence in the woods and the discovery of 13 identical coffins. Each coffin, according to the record, contained the body of a young woman, all around the same age, 25. None of them were identified. The report ended abruptly with the words, "The last one was still warm." When Harlow shared this with the police department, some officers refused to continue the case. The parallels between the old Walden disappearances and Mary Thompson's case were undeniable. Both involved isolated locations, missing evidence, and inexplicable voices recorded on analog devices. The sheriff began to wonder if the Red House was built over something older, a burial site, or perhaps something worse. That night he took the old coroner's note home, but when he woke up the next morning, it was gone. In its place was a blank sheet of paper with fresh handwriting that simply said, "You're reading the wrong file." By December 1974, the case had taken a dark toll on the department. 2 officers resigned abruptly, claiming the investigation was haunted. Another, Deputy Ward, the same man who first noticed the missing files, disappeared while off duty. His car was found abandoned near the old railway bridge, engine still running, headlights pointed toward the forest. Inside the car, his radio was on, transmitting only static, except for one repeating phrase recorded by dispatch. "Ward, come back inside." But the voice wasn't from the dispatcher. 3 days later, a fisherman found Ward's badge floating in the creek, bent and burned as if exposed to extreme heat. Yet the water was ice cold. After that, fear gripped the entire town. People started locking their doors before sunset. Some even moved away. And in the following weeks, a local reporter who tried to document the story, Linda Harrow, was found unconscious in her home, her tape recorder playing a loop of her own terrified breathing. When she woke up, she couldn't remember what happened, only that she heard someone whispering inside her head. One night, while reviewing the case timeline, Harlow noticed a disturbing pattern. Every major event, the murder, the break-in, the disappearances, had occurred between 3:15 and 3:30 a.m. He checked the lab reports, radio logs, and even the testimonies. All confirmed the same window of time. Determined to uncover the truth, Harlow decided to stake out the Red House during that exact hour. He went alone, armed with a flashlight, his revolver, and Mary's restored tape, which he carried like a curse. The forest was dead quiet. Even the wind had stopped. At 3:17 a.m., his flashlight began flickering. Then, without warning, the tape recorder in his hand turned on by itself. From it came the faint hum again, the same low tone from before, followed by breathing, not his own. Then, a woman's voice, clear as day, whispered, "It's your turn, Daniel." Moments later, his radio blared with static, and every compass in his car spun violently in circles. He fled, stumbling back toward town, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was following just behind him, staying hidden in the dark. A month later, Sheriff Daniel Harlow resigned without explanation. His official report on the Thompson case was never filed. Instead, he left a personal letter addressed to the State Bureau of Investigation, sealed in an envelope marked, "Confidential, do not open." When the Bureau finally reviewed the file years later, they found that the envelope contained only a single page, completely blackened, as if it had been burned from the inside. After his resignation, Harlow moved away from Silver Creek, settling in a remote cabin near the Oregon border. In 1982, a hiker discovered that cabin, empty, the furniture covered in dust, except for one thing. On the kitchen table sat an old working tape recorder, still spinning, still recording. The tape was labeled, in Harlow's handwriting, "Thompson, case number 002. It never ended." In 1983, nearly 7 years after Sheriff Harlow's disappearance, a box arrived at the Silver Creek post office with no return address. The clerk who received it described the handwriting on the label as oddly shaky, like written by someone who hadn't held a pen in years. The box was addressed simply to Silver Creek Sheriff's Department, attention, evidence. Inside were 5 audio tapes, each labeled with dates ranging from 1974 to 1982. All had the same initials on them, M.T., Mary Thompson. When the surviving deputy, now Captain Doyle, listened to the first tape, his face went pale. It began with the same whisper from the first night, "Please, not again." But this time, the voice continued. The recording captured what sounded like footsteps pacing, a door creaking, and then a male voice saying, "You shouldn't have come back here." The final sound on the tape was a long, drawn-out scream, and then silence. 2 hours later, Doyle called his superior in Salem and ordered the tape sent to the state forensic lab. But before the courier could leave, the power in the sheriff's office cut out completely, plunging the building into total darkness. When the lights came back, the box of tapes was gone. A week later, a drifter showed up in town. A man in his 50s, wearing an old army coat and carrying nothing but a worn-out backpack. He introduced himself as Elias Grant, a former sound engineer looking for work. Locals said he spent most of his time in the old diner on Main Street, sketching diagrams of cassette reels on napkins. One evening, the waitress overheard him muttering to himself, "It wasn't supposed to record them, it was supposed to contain them." Curious, she asked what he meant. He looked up, eyes wide, and said, "Once you play their voices, they know you're listening, and they come back." Later that night, Elias vanished from the diner without paying his bill. When the sheriff's men searched his booth, they found a small metal device, like a homemade recorder, and a note that said, "I built the first one in 1974. Mary wasn't the only test. While searching Elias's abandoned motel room, Captain Doyle discovered something strange hidden beneath a loose floorboard, a hand-drawn map of Silver Creek, marked with red ink. Several points on the map were circled, all leading toward the northern woods. At the very center, drawn in bold, was a symbol resembling an old tape reel, and beneath it, one word, Gateway. When Doyle followed the coordinates, he reached a clearing deep in the forest. There, half buried in moss and soil, was an old metal hatch, the kind used in Cold War bunkers. The hinges were rusted shut, but a faint humming sound could be heard from within, identical to the one captured on Mary's tapes. He contacted the Bureau for backup, but by the time they arrived the next morning, the hatch was gone. Not covered or buried, but completely vanished, leaving only a square imprint in the earth. Weeks later, local radio station WCRK 108.7 FM reported an unexplained signal interference. Every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., the broadcast would cut off, replaced by a low static tone and a faint woman's voice repeating a single phrase. "I'm still here." The signal came from deep within the forest, the same coordinates marked Gateway on Elias's map. When the station engineer tried to trace it, his system crashed and the backup generators shorted out. He told reporters that before it happened, the waveform on his monitor formed a face. Listeners began calling the station, claiming they could hear whispers even after the broadcast returned to normal. Some said they heard their own names being spoken softly through the static. After 2 weeks, WCRK stopped transmitting between 3 and 4 a.m. altogether. The owner said, "It's better to leave that hour empty." In 1986, a former deputy from Silver Creek, Frank Calder, resurfaced in a psychiatric hospital in Portland. He'd been missing for over a decade. When doctors asked where he'd been, he replied, "I never left. The town just forgot I was still there." Calder spoke obsessively about the voices in the static and the house that moves when no one's watching. He claimed that what happened in Silver Creek wasn't murder or madness. It was a containment breach. According to him, the Red House was never a house at all, but a machine built to store human echoes, fragments of consciousness left behind after death. When asked who built it, Calder laughed and whispered, "Elias didn't build it, he just opened it again." 3 weeks later, Calder was found dead in his cell. Cause of death unknown. But the security cameras recorded something no one could explain. At exactly 3:15 a.m., the video feed turned to static for 42 seconds. And in that static, a woman's voice could be faintly heard saying, "It never ended." As the years passed, the legend of the Caldwell murders only grew darker. New homeowners refused to move into the house where the family once lived, claiming they could still hear faint whispers at night, a child's laughter, a woman's sobbing, and the rhythmic creak of the old rocking chair that had been found at the crime scene. The local sheriff, who had worked on the original case, confessed before his death that he always felt someone was watching whenever he drove past that property. He never truly believed the official story, that a robbery had gone wrong. Deep down, he knew the killer was still out there, and that they might not have been entirely human. A journalist named Rebecca Hayes reopened the case in 1979 after discovering old police tapes in an abandoned station archive. The recordings captured eerie static and muffled voices, including what sounded like a confession, but in a tone no human throat could produce. Rebecca became obsessed, visiting the crime scene at night and interviewing locals who still feared to speak openly. One old man told her, "The Caldwells didn't die because of greed or anger. They died because something ancient wanted them gone." Her articles stirred national attention, but within weeks, Rebecca vanished. Her car was found near the same forest where the bodies had been discovered, the keys still in the ignition. When police searched for Rebecca, they uncovered strange carvings on the trees, symbols that matched those found on the basement walls of the Caldwell house decades earlier. Linguists who analyzed them concluded that they belonged to an ancient ritual language, possibly linked to early occult practices brought from Eastern Europe in the 1800s. Locals began whispering that the Caldwells had unknowingly awakened a curse tied to the land itself. The sheriff's replacement ordered the forest to be sealed off, but even today, hikers report seeing flickering lanterns deep among the trees and hearing someone call their names softly from nowhere. By the mid-1980s, the case had become a cultural phenomenon, inspiring documentaries, horror films, and conspiracy theories. Some claim the murders were part of a government experiment gone wrong. Others believe the house was built on a site of ancient burial rituals. A group of paranormal investigators entered the ruins with cameras and recording devices, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. What they found was never released to the public, But one surviving member later confessed that they saw the family standing exactly as they had died, eyes open, watching them. Today, the Caldwell property remains off-limits, fenced and overgrown. Only a few brave souls dare approach it, often leaving terrified and silent. The story continues to echo through generations, a chilling reminder of how darkness can dwell in ordinary places. Whether it was human madness, a forgotten ritual, or something beyond comprehension, one truth remains certain. Once you learn the story of the Caldwells, you never truly forget it. And sometimes, on quiet nights, locals swear the lights in that ruined house still flicker, as if the past refuses to die. 50 years later, the Caldwell house still stands, silent, rotting, and untouched. Locals say you can still hear the tape playing at night, the same voice whispering, "Please, not again." If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and join us next week for another true story, darker than this one.